Nuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So we'll continue from where we left last time. We completed verse number 26 of the 10th chapter of Vibhuti Yoga. So as I mentioned in my previous class, none of the chapters, or in fact none of the verses of Bhagavad Gita are irrelevant. Some people have the tendency to think that there are certain important verses which we need to remember. But most of the 700 verses, almost all of the 700 verses, including those of the first chapter, they indicate something which make our spiritual life meaningful. In fact, a lot of things which pass in the name of spirituality has nothing to do with spirituality. It is our material nature, our desire to enjoy the world, which finds expression through the rituals that we pass off in the name of religion. So that is the problem. Whereas here, Bhagavan Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he tries not to trivialize anything that we see around us. It's quite the opposite of what people do. They reduce religion to something that will satisfy their desires. They want to accomplish their desires which they have for things of the world or for other material needs, which they try to fulfill because they find it difficult through their own self-effort to achieve success. So then they turn to God. That is why most of the religious ideas and ideals that have become popular is nothing but an extension of materialism. So we want material welfare. We want to enjoy all the things of the world with minimum effort. We don't want to work hard. If somebody tells us that we need to work hard to achieve something in life, we always try to find out if there are other ways which can make things easier for us to achieve the same things, our same objects of desire, but with less effort. And unfortunately, most of the religious ideas, or you can say dogmas, I would not call it spirituality, but most of these dogmas serve that purpose. That if you believe in a particular god or deity, it was there in the ancient ages also. I'm not saying it's a modern phenomena. It was there from time immemorial, even during the days of Bhagavad Gita. That's why we saw in many of the chapters earlier. We have come to the 10th chapter, where the Lord is expressing certain ideas which describe his glory not fully but partially. Because human mind does not have the capacity to understand the idea of God or the idea of Ishvara in its totality. So even a partial understanding will ultimately lead to a higher understanding of that reality. That is the purpose of the 10th chapter. Otherwise, people think that what are these vibhutis? Okay, you find something great in nature. There are great, wonderful trees. One among the trees, Sri Krishna will select, Ashwatha tree, as I explained last time. So that is the greatest among trees. There are certain reasons why he does it. But then with all the explanations, we find that it is, after all, what is so great about the Ashwatha tree? There are so many other trees as well. So we believe that some chapters, like the 10th chapter, which describe the Vibhuti of the Lord, as Sri Krishna himself has mentioned in the beginning, that I am just giving you a glimpse, a sample. You know, in movies, they have this trailer. Trailers don't give you the entire content of the movie, but they give you a glimpse of what to expect. So also the Lord warns Arjuna and says, I am just giving you a glimpse of my glory, but under no circumstances should you think that this is the total glory that I represent. The concept or the idea of Ishvara is far, far, far greater than what Arjuna or any human mind can conceive. So he's given many examples up to 26th verse. Now we'll see 27th, and there are other verses. Finally, he will conclude by saying to Arjuna that what I described is a very, very small, infinitesimally small example of what the glory of the Lord is. But because you cannot comprehend with your limited mind, with your mind which is full of desires and which is full of material pursuits, you will understand only the material things. So in your own language, I'm trying to explain what the Lord is, what the glory of the Lord really is, by giving that example. And then if you extrapolate that, if you want to really know what Ishvara is, what Brahman is, what reality is, then these small steps will serve you as an intermediate step for meditation. So now we come to the 27th verse. And in those days, there were a lot of mythologies which gave rise to Indian culture, because people would normally like to hear stories. When very tough and difficult philosophical things are told, people just tend to get confused. They said this is beyond our capacity. So these same ideas are explained through the simple Puranic stories like Puranas. We have so many myths, there's so many partially historical, partially myths, partially mythological, like Mahabharata, Ramayana, which try to, and of course the Puranas, which try to put the great ideas of the Upanishads and the Vedas in a form that is easily understandable by the common man. So none of the chapters of the Gita are to be taken lightly. That is the idea. So most of the ideas that we get in this 10th chapter, though it may appear to be very trivial, we will feel, many people say, why can't we just skip it and study something more serious? After all, he is naming a few plants and some trees and some other things and saying, see my glory in these. What is the glory? Perhaps a scientist will say, what glory is there to consider the Ashwatha tree as the greatest among all trees? What will I gain? So let us have some kind of philosophy. But that is not the case. It is very important in the sense, when we are living in this world, when we see these things around us, when we read the stories of Puranas and other things, the idea behind these verses here in the 10th chapter is to direct your mind towards the highest. Though it may not be possible at this stage to think about higher things, since we are very much attached to power, to nature, the beauty of nature. So let us gradually concentrate on this best among the natural things, and that in turn will lead you to the highest. That is the idea. So this background you have to understand before we discuss. Now this 27th verse is about some stories. They are not objects from nature, because these are all myths. And these myths have some value, they have some significance. So this verse says, Uchchai Shravasam Ashwanam Viddhimam Amrutam Udbhavam Airavatam Gajendranam Naranam Cha Naradhipam. Now in this verse, he is talking of the famous myth where the churning of the ocean of milk, they saw Kshira Sagara. There is an ocean of milk. It's, of course, obviously you don't have an ocean of milk. You can't have an ocean of milk, but it's a myth. It has certain symbology. It signifies something. So in that mythological story, Shiva is also involved in that. The churning of the ocean of milk, which is known as Kshira Sagara, by Devas and Asuras. Devas and Asuras are not just mythological characters. They are very much people who belong to this world. the good people, but very often weak, and the bad people who are very often strong. It's a contradiction, but that is how the world is. So in this myth tells us that the good people are not necessarily strong, nor are the bad people necessarily weak. So what happens is, when there is a conflict between the good and evil, or the devas and asuras, very often the stories will show, if you follow these myths very carefully, it is the asuras who win, not ultimately, who win. And then the devas have to take the help of Shiva or Vishnu or any other god and then defeat this asura. So that is an eternal story. There are so many stories, but there is a reason behind all these stories. So this great myth, which is known to almost every Hindu, if he has read at least the basic stories of Hinduism, the basic myths, which are significant. We have to remember that it's not just some cock and bull story like fairy tales of the West, which are just created by human beings. No, these are created by great rishis who wanted to convey some spiritual truth. So there is this story or this myth where an ocean of milk supposedly is churned, because both the asuras and the devas were told that if you churn this ocean, you will get amruta, nectar. That is the nectar which was sought by both devas and asuras, because everybody wants to become immortal. Even the most wicked of people, he thinks by his strength he can become eternal, or he can live eternally, which never happens. So also the devas. But very often these devas or these good people are weak. So they both decided, let us get this nectar. So there was some kind of compromise, as these politicians do. When they quarrel, they said, okay, let the bad people and good people come together and sort out some compromise so that we can share. So they started churning, and they say, when the churning took place, two things came out. First came out Uchay Shravas. Uchay Shravas is the name of a horse. So because it has come from this churning, so everybody wanted that. The horse Uchay Shravas came out of the nectar that was the result of churning the ocean Kshir Sagara. So many other great things came, but among the horses, Sri Krishna says, I am the Uchay Shravas. That doesn't mean he is incarnated as Uchay Shravas, that is the name of that horse. But among all the horses, there may be great horses, wonderful horses, but among them I am the greatest among horses. And among the elephants, the elephant which was normally was normally used by Indra. In these myths only, I'm talking of the myths. Airavata is the elephant which is used by Indra, who is the lord of the Devas, to fight the Asuras. So Airavata is what came out of that churning. And because it is one of the strongest elephants ever found, which was used in warfare, Lord says, I am the Airavata among all the elephants. But this event is just an allegorical statement of the eternal process of the good and bad people who are jointly churning the ocean of life. Now they both want something out of life. It's not that only the good people get good things. Sometimes bad people also get good things. So this churning goes on, and everybody wants happiness. Everybody wants wealth. Everybody wants learning, prosperity. Nobody wants, even the bad people want success. Success is not the monopoly of only good people. There's no guarantee that only good people will succeed. Very often, strong people, like bad people, apparently they succeed, but in the worldly sense, not in the spiritual sense. The worldly sense, they will definitely have some kind of temporary success. They will have wealth, they will have learning, they will have prosperity. Whatever they want, they have by the power of their strength. So here they thought, by churning, this story is representing the mad race for wealth, learning, and prosperity, which we churn in the ocean of life. It's not just the milk ocean that we are churning, it is the ocean of life. Everybody is struggling in her or his own way to get the maximum out of this world. As Robert Ingersoll told Swami Vivekananda, he was a very, very materialist person. He was very atheistic. He was an atheist. He said, I just believe in squeezing the orange of this world dry. I don't care what happens to others. I just want to grab my share by hook or by crook. And that is how I'm going to enjoy. That was his philosophy. But Swami Vivekananda told him, see, things are not so easy. You perhaps think it is as easy as squeezing an orange and getting every drop of it. But if you come to the real path of Dharma or Vedanta, it teaches a better way of really negotiating this world, where you can enjoy every drop. Now, the way you are trying to enjoy the world, finally it ends up that the world enjoys you, not you. You don't enjoy the world. You try to squeeze the orange, but all the drops are taken by somebody else. That is how Swamiji explained, and that is what this story also indicates. That both Devas and Asuras wanted to churn the ocean of Kshirosagar, that is the ocean of life. It's an allegorical statement. It is an eternal process going on. It's nothing to do with myths. It is a real story going on, only we need to know how to interpret it. So jointly churning the ocean of life, each one of us, whether we belong to the category of Devas or Asuras, through earning wealth, through learning and prosperity, whatever we think will make us happy, we are churning this ocean. It's an eternal process going on. There's nothing wrong with it. But how much success we will get, ultimately, what will be sustained, that depends on, according to the Bhagavad Gita, of course. If you see all the 18 chapters, later on you will come to know Sri Krishna is giving the solution to that. But now he is just mentioning how people go after these things. And even through this process, he says, among the horses, you have to meditate on Uchcha Shravas. Means it is a kind of intermediate meditation which will not lead you to the goal, but at least it will make you go. If you want want something, aspire for the best. If you want something, aspire for the best among that species. If you want an elephant, try to get the Airavata. That is the idea. Don't settle for smaller things. So, and then finally, the last word is very important. Among men, among all the men, Naradipam, among the men, Naranam Naradipam. Naradipam means one who rules over men, that is the king or the ruler. So among all the men, I am the ruler. That means I am represented, though partially, by the ruler more than the ruled. Because he is the source of all power. So that's the idea. So a monarch who is born with royal excellence, I mean, if he is a real monarch, he is regarded as a spark of that divinity in human form. Human beings have power, but the king has definitely, obviously, more power than the human beings. And being the best of horses, the best of elephants, and the best of human beings are indeed partial manifestations. Even though they are partial, they are manifestations of the divine glory of the Lord. If you see the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you will find that Sri Ramakrishna also liked people who have achieved something in life. So people used to ask him, why do you want to see Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar and other people? He said, see, there is some power of the Lord which is manifesting through them that has made them noble and great. So why should I not go? Why should I be? He had no ego, he was like a child. He would go and see them. I said, I want to see him. That is the idea behind this chapter. When you see the greatest among the species, your mind automatically focuses or is diverted towards the Lord. the divine glory of the Lord. Though it is partial, it gives you a hint. Now we come to the 28th verse. Now he is coming to the inanimate objects. We first discussed among rishis who is the greatest Kapila Muni and all those things. Now he is coming to the objects of which we see around us. We see around us weapons, we see around us other animals, and so among Ayudhanam, the 28th verse. Now we'll discuss the 28th verse, then we'll go on to the 29th. 28th verse of the 10th chapter Vibhuti Yoga says, Ayudhanam aham vajram dhena dhenu nam asmi kamadhuk prajaschasmi kandarpaha sarpanam asmi vasukihi. Now there is a reason why he is giving these four examples. Ayudhanam, among all the weapons, I am Vajram. I'll tell you what this Vajram is. It's known as thunderbolt. This is the famous weapon. I'll explain what it is, but among the weapons, there are many weapons, the divine weapons and the weapons that were normally used in this warfare. But he is the thunderbolt. Dhenu nam, among the cows, Dhenu means cow. Asmi kamaduk, Surabhi, the other name of kamaduk is Surabhi, the heavenly cow. They say this cow yields all desires. And prajanaha cha asmi, prajanas cha asmi, Kandarpa. Kandarpa is the god of Kama or lust, Kama Dev, because without that, no creation is possible. Then Sarpanam Asmi Vasuki. Vasuki is another serpent. I'll tell you why these things are singled out by the Lord as the greatest among their particular species. So normally you see we have Vishnu or Narayana having weapons. And the two main weapons is the Gada. That is why it is also known as Gadadhara. If you see Vishnu's symbology, if you see the drawings which are made of Vishnu or Narayana, they normally he has four hands and he has a mace. Mace is the Gada, and there is Gadadhara, and discus is the Sudarshan Chakra or the Chakra, discus. They are the weapons of Narayana. So, but instead of referring to these two divine weapons, which are normally found with Vishnu, Sri Krishna is mentioning a third weapon. Now, what is the significance? He is saying the Lord has purposely mentioned this weapon known as Vajra. Why? Why is this thunderbolt more important than Gada? And Gada is the mace, and the Vajra, Gada, and what is that other one? No, discus. That is Sudarshan Chakra. Chakra is the sharp discus with which Vishnu kills lot of. That is the famous weapon of Vishnu. So why not these two weapons? Instead of referring to these celebrated weapons, Lord has deliberately mentioned Vajra. There is a history behind this Vajra. What is this Vajra? So the former weapons are eternally part and parcel of the Lord Vishnu. They are there in every symbol of Vishnu that we see, or Narayana that we see. Whereas Vajra is manufactured for a specific purpose. When Indra was losing the battle, Indra is of course, all of you know, is the king of Devas. So they were finding it because Asuras were strong. Normally in society, evil people seem to be stronger. Definitely they are stronger because they are more united than the Devas. So very often the Asuras were winning this battle. So Indra was forced, because most of the Devas, that's very surprising to know, they are given to a lot of enjoyment. Devas, they forget the purpose of their life. That's why they are weak. They waste a lot of energy in this dance and other things. So normally when the Asuras attack them, they are not prepared to win. And then Indra has to rush and then the famous Vratasura, that is the story, for whom the Vajra had to be this thunderbolt, which is supposed to be the most powerful weapon. But how was it created? The story behind this Vajra is very important. That is the whole essence of spirituality, because Indra found it difficult to kill Vritrasura. Vritrasura was one of the leaders of Asuras who had through his tapasya, he had got a lot of weapons. So they knew that without this Vajra, we are helpless. It's only Vajra that can help us to defeat Vritrasura. But where could we get this weapon? And where do we get the material with which the Vajra is to be manufactured? It is very strange, but there is a deep significance behind this story. And then somebody tells them that the material for manufacture of this all-powerful weapon, which is known as Vajra, is the bones of a sage, of a rishi. Not any rishi, a rishi who is full of purity, full of austerity, full of perfection. Not any worldly person's bones will help. Only a person who has done a lot of tapasya, who is pure, and who is all perfect. So Indra goes to Dadichi. Dadichi was meditating. In fact, he had already realized the highest. So he was not bothered whether his body lives or goes. So the Indra goes and requests him, see, there is a weapon which can end the tyranny of these Asuras. So will you give your bones to me? So this has a deep significance that it is the pure and the austere and the perfect among humanity which really contribute for the cause of universal welfare. So Indra found that this Dadichi is the only person who is alive who fulfills all the conditions. He was right from birth, he was pure, and he had done a lot of austerities. And he was a perfected sage. So this sage Dadichi, the sage said, okay, I will sit in Samadhi, and when I give up my body, you can use my bones for preparing that Vajra which can defeat the Asuras. So the thunderbolt could be made only because of the sacrifice of Dadichi. He had realized the highest, so he said, I'll just enter into Samadhi and you take my bones. So that Vajra Yudha, or that Vajra, which was actually chosen by Sister Nivedita for our Indian flag. Very, very sad story in in our political history. There's so many mistakes that we made. Much before our independence, Sister Nivedita had designed a wonderful flag. Perhaps you people, we do not know this. And the symbol of that flag, it was a saffron colored flag with a Vajra symbol in golden colored Vajra. She had that famous painter, Avanindranath Tagore, or I don't know, maybe it was either Avanindranath Tagore or Nandalal Basu. One of these two famous painters whom she encouraged, they designed this Vajra because there is a description of Vajra. So that Vajra was placed and the flag was designed by her because she knew someday India will become independent. And she wanted this flag, which was a symbol of the power of Dadichi, the renunciation and the sacrifice of Dadichi. So, symbolizing that it is only through sacrifice that we can get our freedom, which ultimately we got our freedom, India got its freedom through sacrifice. So, to symbolize that, Sister Nivedita designed this flag, which unfortunately was rejected by the then so-called leaders of India. Unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that though it was proposed to be one of the designs for the flag, they chose the flag. Obviously, now there is a new flag, it's fine. But the original flag was designed by Avanindranath Tagore with the help of Nivedita gave that idea. That flag is still there, it's printed in her books. So this Vajra was a symbol. According to her, this Vajra symbolizes the strength of the good over evil. That is what she felt India stood for. Anyway, that is part of history. So the willing self-sacrifice of Dadichi made it possible for the devas, the good people, to defeat the evil forces. This holy act of Dadichi Muni, who gave up his life to make this weapon, is described as the weapon of Vajra and is represented by Vajra. And the Lord says that the divine power is always there where the Vajra is there. That means wherever there is the spirit of sacrifice and unselfishness, which Dadichi showed, wherever, in whichever society, the whole society is built upon the sacrifice of these great people. So these are all symbolic, allegorically it has been described. Now coming to the next example, Kamaduk. It is a cow of desire. It's one of the rare products that came from the churning of the ocean, which we have mentioned. The cow has the power. It's, of course, Uchchaishravas and Airavat also came along with that. Kamaduk. Kamadhenu also, it is known as Kamadhenu. That is the mythical cow, where the cow has the power, according to the Puranas, to supply all the requirements in life, whatever you need. So tradition says that Rishi Vasishtha, who was the guru of Rama, in Ramayana it is there, this Rishi Vasishtha, he could support all the students, including Rama and all his brothers. They were under Vasishtha Muni's ashram. So they were never in want because he had this divine cow, Kamadhenu, Kamaduk it is called. So because of this cow, he could feed all the students, obviously free of cost, because all the things that were necessary for the Gurukula was available, and this Rishi did not have to bother to collect money to feed this. So this is another allegory. And we find that in chapter 3, the 10th verse says that a willing and cheerful mind, and if we try according to dharma in the right way, you will get the milk cow of desire. Means there is a proper way of getting what you desire if you follow the path of dharma. That was mentioned already in the chapter 3, stanza 10. So that same Kamadhenu means in Indian scriptures, in the Indian tradition, dharma, artha, kama and moksha, these are the 4 ideals. Of course, moksha is the highest ideal, but dharma, artha and kama. Artha means wealth. Generating wealth is not bad. Even kama is not bad. Any desire is not bad. Everybody, the world exists because of desire, but it has to be supported by dharma. So first dharma comes. So this Kamaduk, as it has been mentioned in the 3rd chapter, it is the result of any action that is done with righteousness. So anything that you do with righteousness, with dharma as the background, then artha and kama can be, they are legitimate. Otherwise, if dharma is not followed and adharma is followed, then that whatever you artha or kama one gets, that will not lead to moksha. So artha and kama with dharma as the background ultimately leads a person to the ideal of moksha. So that is the idea here. When Kamadhenu, it's not just any cow, but it's a cow of desire, and your desires will be fulfilled provided you lead a life of dharma. That is the idea. And because Vasishtha and all his disciples, the students, including Rama, who was trained in that Gurukula, was trained in the lessons of dharma were given to all the children there, all the students, including the brothers, Bharata, Shatrughna and all. So this Kamadhenu is symbolic of that. And this was the cow that was supplying all the needs in the Gurukula. So those who have an exuberant mind, full of righteousness, justice, dharma, his ventures, his holy ventures, they become not only successful, but they can be considered as glories of Lord. So artha and kama was never considered bad in the Indian society, though moksha was the highest ideal. But still, artha and kama, if they are supported by dharma, they can be considered as glories of God. Now we come to Kama, Artha we came. Now Kandarpa, among those who lead to rebirth, I mean, somebody has to carry on the creation. It is known as Prajanan, means you give rise to the next generation. So Kandarpa, so without Kama, there is no progeny is possible. So you'll not. So that urge also Sri Krishna says, in some way or the other, it is part of the Divine Lord's wish that continues, that Prakriti continues to give birth to, I mean, nature is always creating something. The Lord puts that urge in Prakriti as one of his divine attributes so that the creation continues unimpeded. Now coming to Vasuki. Why does he call Vasuki as the greatest among all serpents? So the serpent is normally a venomous creature. Sarpa is not a very, you can say, not a very noble creature. Of course, the snake does not bite unless you trouble it. It is a very, that way it's a very mild animal. Unless its life is threatened, it does not bite. So this venomous creature, Sarpanam, among all the Sarpas, there is another symbology associated with the snake. It's also compared with the Kundalini, the symbol of Shakti, the cosmic energy. Normally, the Tantras explain it this way, that a coiled serpent, all our nervous energy which is there which passes through the spinal cord, the Vyana Vayu, among the 5 Pancha Pranas, there is this Vyana which is in a coiled up form. Only a little is released, and that is responsible for all our nervous energy and all the activities that we do. It is not even 1/100th of what we are capable of. So we are hardly using, most of the nervous energy is wasted. So it is symbolized by a serpent which is not active. It's symbology. There's nothing, no serpent involved in the idea of Kundalini, but Tantra has used this as a symbol. It's a symbol of Shakti, the cosmic energy inside all of us. The vast reservoir of cosmic energy is symbolized by this serpent. But that serpent is in 99.9 or in a majority of human beings, it is dormant. It is totally dormant. And with the small portion, we are doing all these things and we think we are doing great things. But that dormant power, which is known as Kundalini Shakti, is represented by the serpent. And all our happiness, all our misery, the life, death, all are expressions of this energy. To the extent we have more energy, the more capable we are to face the situations of life. And if a person is not able to face the situation, it is this lack of energy. So the negative expression is the poison in the snake. Snake by itself is not a bad animal, but its poison is bad. So Vasuki, the great snake, the poisonous snake, it served a great purpose in this Samudra Manthan, where they used the Mount Meru and how to churn that. So they got hold of this Vasuki, the biggest among snakes, and they used it as a rope to churn the ocean. So the Lord, in fact, speaks of the cosmic energy, which is symbolized by the serpent Vasuki. And he says, among Sarpas, I am not an ordinary snake. I am the greatest among all the snakes. So meditating on the different types, this is the Vasuki snake. But then in the next verse, you will find, we come to another analogy, which is known as Anantas Chasmi Naganam. There is another variety which is known as Naga, the cobra. Varunoha, in fact, it is rather strange, but Vishnu is often shown as sleeping on a bed of the huge serpent known as Ananta. He is the biggest among all the Sarpas, Nagas, not Sarpas. Sarpas Vasuki, but among the Nagas, the big serpents, he is the one on whom on whom Vishnu is reclining. If you see the Hindu symbology, you will find this Sheshanaga. We call it Sheshanaga, or also he is known as Ananta. So he is actually, they say it's an incarnation of, Balrama is an incarnation of Sheshanaga in the Krishna Leela, they say. So he is the support, he is the protector, or the, you can say the asana, the support of Vishnu himself. Vishnu is lying, and with his hood, the Naga, which is known as Ananta, is supporting him. So Anantas chasmi Naganam Varuna Yadasamaham. Now, what is this Varuna? Varuna among the water deities. Now, every force of nature, air is known as Pavana. So, Pavana has a deity associated with this. So, there is a deity which represents, which is supposed to be representing water. So, Yadasam means among the water deities, I am Varuna. Varuna is worshipped. When we worship the sea, when we worship the lake and any water body, we chant the mantra of Varuna. So Varuna is supposed to be the chief among the water deities. And Pitrunam, our ancestors, I am Aryama. So he is supposed to be the, in China they have this ancestor worship. They don't worship gods in the way we do. For them, ancestor worship leads them to the highest. So they have this tradition of ancestor worship. They are very, one of the oldest religions which believed in. So in Gita, we have this reference that Aryama, who is the chief amongst our Pitris, he is the greatest among all our ancestors. Ancestors means the father's father and father, grandfather, that whole generation. Finally, in the Hindu mythology, it is Aryama who is considered to be the deity. So all these Pitris, water, everything, if you see all the Vedic mantras, especially the Rig Vedic mantras, you will find that these great things in nature, the water bodies, among the snakes, everything is deified. That is one way of focusing on Ishvara. Though we do not know his true nature, we hold on to the partial nature of the Lord and then try to search for that ultimate reality which is known as Ishvara. So these are all preparatory meditations. This 10th chapter, in fact, all these verses are for people who cannot live, who have to live amongst all these things. So when they see these objects, different objects, as we saw that Sthavarana, Himalaya. So when they see mountains, when they see Himalaya, they get a totally different feeling. They're so majestic. So when you come across any hill or maybe a small mountain, your mind automatically should go to the largest among, the biggest among the highest among the mountains, that is Himalayas. So all these things, among Nagas, I am Ananta, among Sarpas, I am Vasuki. So these take the mind upward to the highest. And then Yama, Samayatam, among all the governors, I am Yama. Now this is very important. Why Yama? You know what Yama is, Yama and Niyama. So Niyama is external control, Yama is internal control. In Patanjali, even before you start asana and pranayama, they say you have to be first a master of Yama and Niyama. Niyama are external disciplines which you impose upon yourself, and Yama are internal disciplines. Disciplines like not getting angry, not being envious of other people. So there are certain things which we need to control, which are mental, which are not physical, but they are mental. The control of anger, control of jealousy, control of many vices that we face, our mind is susceptible to. These are known as yamas. And niyamas are external controls. Like you fast, you don't eat this, you don't eat that, you do some kind of discipline, do some asanas, yoga and other things. They are all niyamas. So among all the yamas, the Lord says, I am yama among all the governors. I mean, governor in the sense that which governs many things. See, people are governed by the king. The animals are governed, but they say by the lion, who is the king of the forest. There are so many people who govern. The minister will govern a particular area, the chief minister a particular state. So these are all governors. Among all the governors, the people who govern, it is very easy to govern externally, to become the boss of many other people. But to govern your own mind, you need yama. So life and death, our future, they all depend on, or here in this case, practice of self-control is also known as yama in the science of yoga. But the Lord of death also is known as Yama. Yamadeva, we call him. Because he is the one who controls. I mean, our karma, we can't go on, whatever causes are there, they will lead to certain effects. We can't say that I'll behave any way I like, and then the results, I don't have to bear the fruits of those karma that I do. So Yama is supposed to be the dispenser of the fruits of the karma. So as I mentioned in our Raj Yoga class, that three things are determined by our past karma, that is jati, ayu and bhoga. What species will be born, where will I born, which family I'll be born, what facilities I'll get for practice of religion, and how long I'll live. These things are all determined by our past karma. Jati, ayu means the span of our life. How long I'll get a chance to practice all these things. And finally, bhoga. Bhoga means experiences, good and bad. It includes bad experience as well. So, depending, this cause and effect theory is determined by this yama in two ways. One is yama means your own control. Your own self-control will decide what your future will be. May not be in this life, or maybe may not be immediately, but after many years. So what you do now will result in your future. That is known as yama. In the science of yoga, it is known as yama. But the same yama is symbolically represented by the king of death, who is also known as yama. And we say that everybody's ayu or lifespan is a resultant of his own karma. He should not blame anybody for his or her death. So there is a unrelenting justice in life. So life and death are just determined by yama according to their karma. So he is among the best among the controllers. That is why when Nachiketa wanted to understand the secret of death, which is the one secret which nobody knows. Everybody seeks an answer, but nobody knows why and how death comes and what happens after that. So that great question of life was answered by Yama and Yama alone. That is why Nachiketa, that young boy who was wiser than his father, said, no, I don't want answers to your or temporary solutions for all the problems of life. I have seen. He in fact saw the behavior of his father, how he was trying for Swarga, doing some kind of sacrifice. And in the beginning, he very politely said, dear father, this is not the way. The scriptures say this is not what will give you an eternal result. You may get some kind of heaven or something with this, but even that you are not doing properly. So his father was very angry. He said, I am your guru, I am your teacher, and you are telling me what I should do. And so he curses him and says, he then says, you are giving so many things as sacrifice. Some of the things that you are donating are useless. At least you donate me. I am not a useless person. I am your son. At least I am good. I'll be useful to somebody. So please donate. Whom are you going to donate to me? He was saying it sarcastically, but his father gets angry. And out of anger, he said, I'll give you to Yama himself. So he says, very, very good. That is where I wanted to go. Because I want to know the secret of life, or the secret of death rather. What happens after death? How should I lead a life which will enable me to get immortality? So this Yama, which means internal mind control, also means the Yama, the god of death. And because he is the eternal controller of our destiny, it is supposed to be the best way, the best representative of Ishvara. So that is verse number 29. So this Yama, or it comes from Ishvara himself. That's why Krishna is saying, you, among all the governors or among all the people who govern or rule this universe, I am the ruler of the mind, or the ruler of our destiny, of everybody's destiny. So whether it is a king or a beggar or a good man or a bad man, final destiny is decided by Yama. So it is worthwhile to meditate on Yama. So this is the essence of verse 29. Now we have a few minutes. If there are some questions, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll just read out the 30th verse, which we'll discuss in the next class. I think there are 2 questions in the chat box. I'll just see. Yeah, so I'll answer that. But anyway, I'll first go through the 30th verse. Prahladaha cha asmi daityanam, among daityas. Now this will require a lot of explanations. Who Prahlada was and why is the chief among the daityas. Kalah kalayatam aham, mruganam cha mrugendroham, vainateya cha pakshinam. Among birds, I am vainateya pakshi. That is Garuda. And among beasts, I am the lion, Mrugendraha. Mrugendra is the name of the lion. So now this will require a lot of explanation. So we will discuss it in our next class. But among all the things that decide our fate, I am Kala. The Lord himself says in the beginning that I am Kala, I am the time, I devour everything. In fact, if you see the next chapter, which is known as the 11th chapter, where he describes himself as the eternal time which swallows everything, good people, bad people. He in fact showed the Vishwarupa Darshana in the 11th chapter. That will come to that later. There are many verses in this 10th chapter now. So among all the Daityas, I am Prahlada. I'll just translate this for you this time. Next time we'll discuss in detail. Among Daityas, I am Prahlada. Among all the things which decide our destiny, I am Kala. Time, they say, and tide waits for no man. Time is something which once you lose, you don't get. You get it back. It is eternally devouring everything. Time does not spare anybody, neither the richest or the poorest, the king and the servant and the slave, everybody. So among all the people who cause who are responsible for our destiny, I am Kala. So Ishvara is Kala. And among beasts, I am lion, Mrugendranam, Mrugendraha, Mruganam, and Vainateya, son of Vinita. Vinita, Garuda is supposed to be the son of Vinita. So Garuda is a bird. All of us know what role it played in Ramayana and all. So Vainateya means the son of Vinita. His name is Garuda. Pakshinam. Pakshi means among all the birds. So let us discuss in the next class. But there's one question which I'll answer. There's time for only, I think, one question. Is there any difference between Asuras and Rakshasas in the Shastras, or are they the same? Yeah, Rakshasas, now we have these Daityas also. We will come. Prahlada was actually supposed to be the head of Daityas. So there are some minor differences. They're not much. Rakshasa or Asuras. I think Asura is a more ancient word. We will find this Devasura conflict in the Vedas, Rig Veda itself. In fact, there is a story. Rig Veda, some people have gone into the historical details of Rig Veda, that the Zoroastrian religion, the Persians, for example, they were known as Ahura. Asura because in Persian language, in those days, they could not pronounce Sa. So Sindhu became Hindu. Ha. So Asura became Ahura. So Ahura Mazda is their god, and they have their scripture also. The Zoroastrians, they believe in Ahura. So they say it is some of the asuras in conflict with the devas, they were driven out from the. So asuras are not demons or anything. They are strong people, and they do not follow dharma. But because of their strength, they win most of the battles. So that was a race. So, but Rakshasas and all these are Puranic concepts, maybe symbolizing the same thing, but there is a slight difference. As you say, Daityas. Prahlada was a very holy person, boy, though he was born the son of Hiranyakashipu, who was the king of those titans, if you would like to call them by that term. Rakshasas, Asuras, Daityas. Daitya is another name. So, we'll see, even among the Daityas, among the bad people, there are certain good people, and one of them was Prahlada, who was a great devotee of Vishnu. In fact, he was the one who was responsible for the Narsimha Avtara. Vishnu came as Narsimha, half man, half lion, to save him. So he is the model for all bhaktas, though he belonged to the Daityas. So among asuras also there are good people. So there are some noble Rakshasas also. In fact, if you see the brothers of Ravana, even Ravana himself, but for one fault, he was also a very great scholar, but one of his brothers, Vibhishana, was also a Rakshasa according to myth. But he was a very noble person and a devotee of Rama himself. So these concepts are there. We have to consider its implications in the modern day world. Really, these myths have to be taken allegorically or figuratively. They should not be taken literally. That's the idea behind these myths. These stories which have this background. That is why we will find even Sri Krishna mentioning it. Till now you saw in Sankhya Yoga, they are all very scientific principles of Vedanta, which he is describing. But then he is taking the Puranas also, some of the Puranic stories which were popular in those days. So he's trying to make a synthesis of all the spiritual literature that was available. Even yoga, the idea of Upanishad. In fact, every chapter of the Gita is known as Upanishad. Then it is one yoga, Sankhya Yoga. Then every chapter is named as a yoga. So there is a confluence of yoga, Dhyana Yoga, the 6th chapter. So like that, every Bhakti Yoga, 12th chapter. So all these yogas, the concepts of yogas, concepts that were prevailing in those times, Daityas, Rakshasas, Sarpas, Nagas, and all these different species, which are part of our myth, has been taken up, so that it's not just trying to trivialize or the philosophy that is to be understood from the Gita, but also to point out to people who meditate on the lesser things, lesser truths. As Swami Vivekananda always said, we are going from lower truth to higher truth, not from error to truth. So there's nothing totally wrong in this universe. So we have smaller versions of truth or lesser versions of truth. We go to higher and higher truth by meditating on the best among the lesser versions. That is how a phased model is given by this chapter. So that's the idea. Thank you. So I'll take leave. Shall I take leave now? Shall we conclude for today?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes. So I'll conclude.
Thank
Om
you, Maharaj.
Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Pranam.